कृपां कुरु महादेवी सुतेषु प्रणतेषु च चरणाश्रयदानेन कृपामयि नमोऽस्तु ते लज्जापटावृते नित्यं सारदे ज्ञानदायिके पापेभ्यो नः सदा रक्ष कृपामयि नमोऽस्तु ते रामकृष्ण गतप्राणा ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः हरिः ॐ. This is the first session on the Katha Upanishad, which is from Krishna Yajurveda. As we already know, the Vedas have got four important components: Samhita, Brahmana, Aranyaka and Upanishad, and of which the Yajurveda has got two versions. One is Krishna Yajurveda, the other one is Shukla Yajurveda, and this particular Upanishad is from Krishna Yajurveda, like Taittiriya Upanishad. So Katha Upanishad has got certain important features. Its uniqueness is that it is in the form of a dialogue between a teacher and a student, and again it is third in the list of the 10 Upanishads that Shankaracharya commended. That is Ishakena Katha Prasna Mundamanduke Dittiri Aitareyam Chandogyam Brihadarnigam Tatha. So these are the 10 Upanishads. So Ishakena Katha Prasna. So this is the third one in the list of the Upanishads. Now we will straight away begin the text. The Shanti mantra, as we already know, it is Sahana Bhavatu, Sahano Bhunaktu, which is well known to you. At the beginning of the text, there is an interesting just a Mangalacharana. Om Namo Bhagavate Vaivaswataya Mrittive Brahmavidyacharya Nachikedase Namaha. So Vivaswan is Surya, and the Acharya, the teacher in this Upanishad, who is the one who teaches Brahmavidya to Nachiketa, is Mrityu. So he is given this adjective Vaivaswata. So Brahmavidyacharya Nachikedase Namaha. Now, one unique aspect of Shankaracharya's commentary on this Upanishad is that he gives a very elaborate and exhaustive definition and description of the term Upanishad. So that comes at the very beginning of the text. So normally when we take up this particular Upanishad, we always quote or recite, or maybe we may refer to this part of the Shankaracharya's commentary, Shankara Bhashya. So I shall just give a brief description of the Bhashya, and I shall give a very elaborate translation also. So here there is a Upanishad Artha is given here. At the beginning, Bhashyakara says, Atha Kathagopanishad Vallinam Sukhartha Prabodhanartham Alpagrantha Vrittihi Arabhyade. So you find the word is used, Kathagopanishad Vallinam. So that should be understood in the context of the structure of the text. The text has got two adhyayas, what we call chapters. And each of these two chapters has got three vallis. Vallis roughly corresponds to what we call section. And in reality, the actual discussion of Brahma Vidya in this Upanishad begins only with the 18th verse of the second valli of the first chapter. So please remember the structure of the Upanishad. Two broad divisions called Adhyaya, and each of these two divisions has got three vallis. So Prathama Valli, Dvitiya Valli, Tritiya Valli of the first chapter. Similarly, three vallis, three sections of the second chapter. So total two chapters. Each chapter has got three divisions, and the division is called valli. So the first chapter, it's called Adhyaya in Sanskrit, has got three vallis, and the second chapter also has got three vallis. The actual discussion of the of Brahma Vidya, of the philosophy of Upanishad, begins only with the 18th verse of the second valli of the first chapter, which means the first valli and the 17 verses of the second valli of the first chapter constitute some kind of an introduction. And the introduction is in the form of a very wonderful story, the background story. I think maybe about a year back when I gave a talk in Milpitas on Katha Upanishad, I gave a brief description of this part of it, but today we are going to give a more elaborate discussion. So the first valli and the 17 verses of the second valli constitute a story, a background to understand the philosophy expounded in the Katha Upanishad. We should get into the spirit, the story behind the story of this interesting mythological narration. So before we actually enter the text proper, that is the first mantra of the first valli of the first chapter, I shall give a brief description of the very meaning of the word Upanishad. So Upanishadayati iti Upanishad. So this is the Vigraha Vakya of Upanishad. Now the word Upanishad actually comes from a Sanskrit root Shad Sad. So this root can become a Pratipadika. It gets a meaning only when we add a suffix to it called Pratyaya. That is Upa, Ni, two Pratyayas. And before, Pratyaya is Quip Pratyaya. I please remember, because when we speak fast, it's like that. So the word Upanishad comes from the root Sad. The original form in Panini's Dhatu Padha is Shadr, that means Sat. Now, in this Dhatu, there are two prefixes. Prefix means Upasarga. Upa, Ni, these are two prefixes, means Upasarga. So Upa Samipye or Sanidhi means going near, going towards. That's the meaning Upa. Ni Nischayena or Nitaram, you sit before a teacher at a lower level so that the knowledge will flow towards you. So Upa, Ni, these Upasargas are added to the Sat, and then a suffix, a Pratyaya is added, is called Quip Pratyaya, which comes and disappears. So this is the structure of the Upanishad. So we should remember the dhatu is sat and two upasargas, upa, ni. Upa means samipe or sanidhye, the prefix, and ni, nischayena. And then a pratyaya or a suffix is added, that is quip pratyaya, then we get this particular word, Upanishad. And now, what are the three meanings attached to the original dhatu? Bhashyakara says, Sadehi dhatohu visharana gadi avasadanarthasya upanipurvasya kiprattyantasya rupam idam Upanishad iti. So, Sadehi dhatohu visharana gadi avasadana. These are three meanings attached to this dhatu, from which the word Upanishad comes. Visharana means smashing, destroying ignorance. And gati means taking towards. And sometimes it has got another word, sithilayati. And in avasadanam, it makes it disappear. So something that destroys, causes to disappear ignorance of this samsara, something that helps us to put an end to this cyclic rotation of being born, going through this life of pains and pleasures, happiness and unhappiness, anxieties and worries, and something that takes us away from this cyclic wheel of rotation called samsara and takes us towards Brahma Vidya. That is called Upanishad. So Bhashyakara says, Sadehe dhatoho visharana gadi avasadanarthasya upanipurvasya kviprattyantasya rupam idam Upanishad idi. Upanishad shabdena cha vyajikhyasida grantha pratibadya vedavastu vishaya vidya uchyate. So why do we give this particular book the word Upanishad? Can a book destroy ignorance? Can a book help us to put an end to this cyclic rotation of samsara? Can a book give us the realization of the ultimate reality? No. But the book contains the teachings that help us to put an end to this cyclic rotation of samsara. The book contains ideas which, when we realize in our life, we will go beyond this empirical cyclic rotation, which will give us Brahma Vidya. So in that sense, this book also is called Upanishad. So one uniqueness of Vedanta is, Vedanta tells again and again that the book doesn't contain the real truth, but the book contains ideas which, when we practice in our life, we can get the highest spiritual realization. That realization, that anubhuti, that experience is called Brahma Vidya. So that is a very unique aspect of Hindu Vedantic heritage. Books are important not because the book is equal to realization, but the book contains ideas which we must try to realize in our life. Srutya, Yuktya, Swanubhutya. We should read the Upanishads, the printed books from a teacher, and then we must do sadhana in our life. We must achieve the basic qualifications to understand the correct meaning and implication of the teachings of the Upanishad. Like sadhana chadushtaya means nitya nitya vastu viveka, ikamutra bhala bhoga viraga, samadhi shakka sambati mumukshutvam. Discerning wisdom between the real and unreal, then a sense of renunciation towards the unreal, giving up the unreal, then practicing certain disciplines, mental restraints, restraining the senses, developing shraddha, a sense of astikya buddhi, a sense of sacredness and integrity and honesty, and then developing a strong urge for spiritual realization and liberation, mumukshutvam. These 4 qualifications are important, and with these qualifications, if you learn this Upanishad and ideas from a teacher and constantly practice Saravana, Manana and Nidhyasana, then we will be able to go beyond the samsara. We will be able to realize the fact that our true identity is something that goes beyond body, mind and intellect. We are the all-pervading, the immanent, the transcendental spiritual reality, the Sarvavyapi, the Antaryami, and Sarvatida, the Atman, that is our true identity. Through spiritual practice, so Srutya, we listen to scriptures, then using our own wisdom, practice sadhana, and then reach anubhuti, experience. Then Brahma Vidya will become a reality in our life. So this is the plan. Now coming to the Upanishad mantra proper. Of course, I would say a few things about this story background. It's also very important. The story is simple. The teacher is Yama, and the disciple is Nachiketa. Nachiketa was the son. A little boy, Kumaram, you find Tamha Kumaram Samdam Niyamana Sudakshina, so you find in the second mantra. So he was a Kumara, he was a small little boy. More or less that was the age in which these little boys had to undergo their Upanayana. Upanayana actually means initiation into Gayatri Mantra, and that also marks the beginning of proper formal learning of Vedas. So he was a little boy, and his father was a Vaidika, a Purvamimamsaka. So there's an interesting story, but before we enter the story, I want to mention this point. As I mentioned earlier, the first Valli and the 17th verses of the second Valli or the first chapter constitute the story background. Through this story backgrounds, a number of spiritual values are introduced. The beautiful, the pastoral setting of the ancient Vaidika Gurukula, the sanctity and sacredness of the relationship within the family setting, and then the tradition of learning the Vedas, the tradition of practicing spiritual disciplines even when you are very small. All these wonderful ideas are found in the story, and along with that, certain values like Shraddha, a sense of sanctity and sacredness, and then the importance of spiritual qualification, sadhana sadhushtaya, and then gurupasati, how to approach a teacher, and how to approach a teacher with all humility and a sense of integrity and honesty, and what are the essential qualifications for an ideal student. All these ideas are given in the story background itself. Now coming to the story, Shankaracharya says, Tatra Akhyaiga Vidyastutyartha. Shankaracharya says the whole story has got only one purpose: to extol, to emphasize the glory and the greatness of Brahma Vidya. So that is what he says. So the first mantra is, please take the first mantra. Ushan Havai Vajasravasaha Sarva Vedasam Dadu Tasya Kha Nachiketa Nama Putra Asa. This is the first mantra. Remember, the story may be just dismissed as just a background, but the story contains certain very important values. And in order to understand Brahma Vidya expounded in the text, we should keep the story in mind. That's very important. So, Ushan, the word Ushan. Ushan means this it is an ancient Vedic term. What it means is the person who is performing a Vedic sacrifice mentioned in this sloka, in this verse, was doing it with some worldly motive. So, Vajasravasaka, that is the father of Nachiketa. Nachiketa's father was Vajasravasaka. He was well known as Vajasravasaka because Vajam andam tad danadi nimittam sravo yasya saha Vajasrava rudidova tasya apatyam Vajasravasaka. So, he was well known, the Vajasravasa and also his father Vajasrava were well known for their charity. In those days, you find these great householders, they used to perform Vedic yajnas and yagas. And for that, they will invite priests. Each of the 4 Vedas will be represented by a priest. For example, Rigveda will be represented by Hoda, or Atharva Veda will be represented by Brahma, and then Yajurveda will be represented by Adhiryu, and Samaveda will be represented by Udgata. So, Hota for Rigveda, Adhiryu for Yajurveda, Udgata for Samaveda, and Brahma for Atharva Veda. So, these Rituks, these Vedic priests will assemble, and then mostly householders. All these Vedic yajnas and yagas were performed by householders. This particular person, Vajasravasaka, is the father of Nachiketa, the main protagonist of this Upanishad. He was a Mimamsaka. He was a very austere student of Vedas, maybe a teacher of Vedas, but not of Vedanta. Remember, Vedas have got, all the 4 Vedas have got 2 main portions, Karma Kanda and Jnana Kanda. Samhita, Brahmana, all these belong to Karma Kanda. So, Nachiketa's father Vajasravasaka was a Mimamsaka. He was performing a yajna. The name of the yajna is Vishwajit Yaga. Vishwajit Yaga is a very elaborate yaga which is not performed these days. It is one of those yagas and yajnas which have almost become extinct in modern times. There are total 14 types of yajnas and yagas, Sapta Havir yajnas and Sapta Soma yajnas, 7 Soma yajnas and 7 Havir yajnas. Vishwajit is Vishwajit, Ashwamedha, etc. Some of these Vedic sacrifices have become almost extinct. So, Nachiketa's father was doing this yajna. And one important characteristic of this particular Vishwajit Yaga was that when you give Dakshina, and Dakshina was an important element of every ritual. When you do puja, whatever you do, any ritual that you perform, Dakshina is not an amount that you give to the priest as a fee for performing it. It is an anga, it is an important part of puja itself, yajna itself. So, this Vajasravasa was doing a yajna, and one important part of this yajna was that he should give away all his wealth as part of Dakshina to the priests. Those who read the mantra may have some doubts. When you read, see, Om Ushan Havai, you find certain word, Havai, etc. There are certain words that you find here. Havai iti Vrittartha Smaranartho Nipado. In Sanskrit, it is called Nipada. Nipada it could be Pada Purana. It is a particle which has no number. It doesn't have a linga, vachana, vibhakti. It is sometimes used as a pada purana. Sometimes it is used as upama, as a comparison. Sometimes ha, vai, such words, he, such words, when used as a nipada, it indicates that this story took place long back, the distant past. In order to indicate the antiquity, the fact that it is said that such a thing happened in the distant past, these words are found in the Veda mantras. Those of you recite Veda mantras may keep in mind these terms are called nipadas. Now, for every and each of these Vedic rituals, there are three important elements. One is vidhi, shraddha, dakshina. So, Nachiketa's father was following vidhi. Vidhi means injunctions, rules, regulations laid down in the scriptures. It's called the vidhi. So he was performing this yajna, Vishwadit yaga, strictly according to rules and regulations, because he had shraddha. Shraddha means shastrasya guruvakyasya satyabuddhi avadharana sa shraddha kadida sadbhihi yaya vastupalabhyate. So shastrasya guruvakyasya. Nachiketa's father, Vajasravasa, he had shraddha, but he had shraddha only in the external mechanical details of the worship, of the yajna, yaga that he was performing. He was not a seeker of Brahma Vidya. So he plays a game of hypocrisy and duplicity. That is the beginning of this unique text. Now, here, the second mantra gives an insight into this background. Tamha kumaram samdam dakshinasu niyamanasu shraddha avivesha somanyada saha amanyada. Now, this little boy, Kumara, must have been maybe 9 years, 8 years. Anyway, he won't be beyond 10 or 11 years. So he was a little boy. So this boy was closely watching the way his father was performing Vishuddhi Yajna. He was following all the mechanical rules and regulations. And then at the time of performing the last anga, the last part of Vishuddhi Yaga, which is giving dakshina, he was giving away old, battered, useless cows. Now, cows was an important currency in the ancient Vedic times in India, because cow was sacred. Cow became sacred because it was used as a dakshina, as a sacred act of charity in the Vedic yajnas and yagas. Cow's milk was used as havi for performing havana kriyas. So, instead of giving away his good cows, he was giving away useless cows. So, he closely watched the game that his own father was playing. So, what happened? Pidodaga, Jagdadruna, Dugdadoha, Nirindriyaha. These are qualifications for the cows that his father was giving away. Dakshina he had to do, because that's part of Vishuddhi Yaga. Yaga will be completed only when Dakshina is given. So, he wanted to complete the ritual in a very dishonest way. So, the Upanishad tells us about the type of cows that he was offering. So, Shankaracharya himself doesn't spare Vajasravasa for his duplicity. Pidodaga ityadina dakshinartha gavo visheshyante Pidam udagam yabhihi ta pidodakaha. Jagdam bhakshidam trinam yabhihi ta jagdatrinaha. Dugdho doha kshirakyo yasam taha dugdha dohaha nirindriyaha. Prajanana asamarthaha jirnaha nishphala gava ityarthaha. Yasta evam bhuda gaha ritikbhyo dakshina buddhya dadad prayachan ananda anananda asukha namityed yete lokaha tansa yajamana gachadi. Bhashyakara gives, without Shankaracharya's commentary, we won't be able to make sense of many of these mantras. So Shankaracharya says, he was giving away these cows, Pidodaka, cows which cannot drink water anymore, because he has already, cows which have already drunk all the water that they could drink in this life. Means they have become so weak, so old and so useless. And then Dugdhaduna means they cannot eat grass any longer, and they cannot give milk any longer. And then Nirindriya, they cannot prajanana asamarthaha, means they cannot have calves any longer. So such useless cows were being offered by Nachiketa's father to the Ritviks, these priests. Now Nachiketa, being a man of Shraddha, Shraddha Avivesha. What is Shraddha? Shraddha has got many meanings. One is Shastrasya Guru Vakyasya Satyabuddhya Avadharana. Shankaracharya in a simple word says, this is from Vivekachudamani. Bhashyakara says Astikya Buddhi. When you do something and when you feel completely identified with the true spirit of what you are doing, with all honesty, with all sincerity, with all sense of sanctity, integrity, that quality is called Shraddha. So Shraddha cannot be really translated. It is something that comes to us as a result of our own spiritual, cultural evolution. Shraddha is not just concentration, but concentration will be an integral part of a person who has Shraddha. A sense of sanctity, sacredness, totally identifying with what we are doing. So, full concentration. So, Shraddha Avivesha. Shraddha came and possessed Nachiketa. That is the language of the Upanishads. When this happens, then for every spiritual seeker, sadhana sadhushtaya, an interest in scriptures will be natural and spontaneous. Now, Nachiketa knew, as a little boy, though he was a little boy, he knew that if his father, instead of giving away good cows, useful things to the priest or Ritviks, to others, if he gives away only useless things, he will not only not get any good result out of it, but rather he will be incurring terrible sin. It is called pratyavaya dosha. An act of, in fact, in some other tikas he say, Nachiketa's father was doing something that will produce both the sin of omission and sin of commission. So he was doing something that should not be done, and he was avoiding doing that should be done. So pratyavaya dosha is only one of the important consequences of such an act. So what is the pratyavaya dosha? Pratyavaya dosha means when you omit doing something, then you will have to do some prayaschitta. So it's a pratyavaya, it's a dosha. If you do something if you don't complete it, or if you don't do it properly, then it will have a undesirable consequence. So Nachiketa, though he was a little boy, because he had this Shraddha, a sense of honesty and integrity, he could see through the game, the duplicity of his own father. So he thinks in his mind, and he speaks actually, Ananta namate lokaha tan sagachadi tadadat. Now, such a person, instead of going to Swarga, which is the real purpose of Vishuddhi Yaga, the Yajamana, the person who is performing this yajna, will go to Naraga or hell. So instead of going to heaven, which is the real purpose, the goal of all these Vedic sacrifices, the person who performs this Vedic ritual in the wrong way, he will not only not go to heaven, but he will certainly go to hell. That's it. Ananta Nama, I mean Atholokan. That means, so Bhashigara says, Ananantaha Asukhaha. His father will go to a higher, a region which is totally devoid of any happiness. He will go to hell. He will burn in hell. That's what is going to happen to him if he goes about distributing these useless cows to people. So this is one important lesson of the first part of the Upanishad. I mean the story part. The concept of Shraddha. That's a very valuable lesson that this Upanishad teaches through this story. Because Nachiketa had this Shraddha, he went ahead in his spiritual life. If you have Shraddha, then you will start evolving, you will start making progress in your spiritual life. That's what happened to him. You find this, as the story unfolds, we'll find out how this sense of total integrity and honesty helped Nachiketas to progress further and eventually receive Brahmavidya Upadesha from Yama himself. Now you can go to the sixth sloka of the Upanishad. Now the story continues. I don't want to go through all the slokas because we don't have time. Nachiketa goes to his father. Sahovaja bidram tasmai mam dasasidi dutiyam trudiyam sahovaja murtevetvam dudamidi. I'm not going to discuss all these slokas. And then bahuna memi prathamo bahuna memi madhyamaha kimsu yamasya kartavyam yanmayadi garishyati. So these verses, I shall give the background. So Nachiketa watched his father performing this yajna with a dishonest, in a very deceptive manner. So he went to his father and he wanted to put a sense of righteousness in his father's mind. So when that asked him, to whom are you going to give me as a gift? Because a son, an ideal son, is the greatest gift, the greatest wealth of a father or a mother. Sarvasvadanam is one of the important elements of this Vishuddhi Yaga. Sarvasvam can mean the most precious and also all wealth. The most precious wealth and also the whole wealth. So Nachiketa slowly goes to his father, who was distributing all the third-rate, worthless cows, bulls, which cannot do anything. It will be a big burden to anyone who receives them as a gift. So Nachiketa asked him, to whom are you going to give me? Dutiyam tridiyam sahovaja. And asked him twice, 3 times, repeatedly. Then father, perhaps in an excited tone, told him, Mrityavetvam didamiti. I'm going to I'm going to make a gift of you to the Lord of Death, Mrityu. So he must have just scolded the son, you get away from here, because little boy is trying to tease him, disturb him when he was engaged in this so-called ritual, though in a very dishonest manner. Nachiketa, then what happened to him? He decided to go to Yama, Mrityu. Now, how this happened, how Nachiketa could go to Mrityu. Perhaps it is said in some of the Brahmana literature that in ancient times there were rituals by which a good, some Vedic scholars with some occult powers could just directly go to higher regions. Anyway, we are not concerned with that part of the story. Now, Nachiketa goes to his father, who became very much worried, who became so sad and shocked when the son went and told him, "Father, you say you are going to make a gift of me to the Lord of Death. All right, I'm going to Yama. I'm going to Yamaloka. I'm going to the Lord of Death." His father was shocked. He didn't mean that when he said, "Murthive Tvam Didamidi, I'm going to give you to the Lord of Death." The father perhaps didn't mean much, but the son looked at the whole thing from a different angle because of Saddha Vivesha. He was a man of Saddha. Every word that we utter should have its meaning and significance. Every word is sacred. So you cannot use words in a very loose manner without indirectly compromising your own sincerity and honesty. So he decided to go to death, and Nachiketa's father Vajasravasa became very much perturbed, very sad and shocked. Then Nachiketa went to his father and consoles him. That is, you find the 6th mantra. So you should remember, the Upanishad doesn't connect these verses together, 1, 5th and 6th like that. It doesn't explain everything. So we have to find out by reading. So Nachiketa goes to his father Vajasravasa and tells him, "Look here, you need not worry. After all, life is so ephemeral. This empirical life is not permanent. So, sasyamiva martipachide, sasyamiva ajayade punaka. Life goes on. We die and we are reborn, and again we die. Just as a plant is eaten by a goat, maybe some animals or human beings, and that plant is born again. As a seed falls to the ground, it comes back again. So coming and going is part of this empirical world. So why should you worry too much if I am going to the Lord of Death? That's why anupasya yatha purve pradipasya tatha apare sasyamiva martyapachadi sasyamiva ajayade punaka. Because father was sad sitting there. So Bhashyakara says, it's a very interesting statement. Yataha sasyamiva martyaha manushyaha pachyati jirno mriyati mrityaja sasyamiva ajayate avibhavati punaha evam anitye jivaloki kim vrshakaranena. So he said, why should you worry so much? You see, yata sasyamiva martya manushya. Human beings are like a plant, like a vegetation, which is eaten by different animals. And they disappear. Like the human beings also. You may live for 100 years, and one day you have to leave this world and leave this body, and you are born again, just like this plant is reborn. When the seed falls to the soil, and if the conditions are appropriate, the plant becomes a tree, and this rotation, this cyclic rotation continues. So, Nachiketa is consoling his father, and he says, Anupashya alochaya vibhavaya anukramena yatha yena prakarena vrittaha purve adikrantaha pitripidamahadaya tava. See, your father, your grandfather, your great-grandfather, your ancestors, they were never compromised with truth. They did not speak something and then break that promise. They did not give word and then broke that promise. Never did that. They were sincere. They kept their word. You used one word, murtave tvam vidami iti. You said, Nachiketa is addressing his father. You said that you are going to give me to the Lord of Death. Now, you spoke that word. That word should come true. Otherwise, you will become a liar. What you said will end up being a lie. So, in order to save you from the sin of having uttered a lie, having uttered a word that you yourself broke later, I should go to the Lord of Death. And he says, and then he reminds Nachiketa. Nachiketa reminds his father, see your ancestors and those who are coming after you, the next generation, they never should compromise. Therefore, don't worry, human life will come and go. Palaya atmanaha satyam. See, a little boy of maybe 7-8 years is addressing his father, who was false in his performance of rituals. That's a true son can protect not only the material prosperity but also the spiritual prosperity of his father. So you can find the sacred bond, the sanctity, the beauty, the harmony, and that pure, the charming beauty of human relations that existed during the Vedic times. That's one important lesson that we have to learn from this story. That's in Bhashyakara say, Brahma Vidya Stutaye. Bhashyakara say the whole story is for Brahma Vidya Stuti. It is just to extol, to praise Brahma Vidya. That's why the story itself provides a proper background for us to understand Brahma Vidya that is going to be discussed in the coming sessions. So, the little boy tells his father, Atmanaha Satyam Palaya, keep your word, stick to truth. Preshayamam Yamaya iti abhiprayaha, and send me, happily send me to the abode of death. Now Nachiketa went to the abode of death. And when he reached there, Yama was out of station. Yama was maybe traveling outside. So Nachiketa reached Yama's place. It seems that he did not enter Yama's home, but he reached the place and maybe without entering the home, he remained outside, stayed for 3 days and 3 nights without food and water. That's the connecting link. So the 7th verse is very important. Vaishwanara pravishati adithihi brahmano grihan tasya edam shantim kurvanti khara vaivasatodagam. So the verse tells you, now Yama returned after 3 days. When Yama returned, his family members, neighbors. So in a story, you need not ask this question, who are the family members of Yama Dharmaraja? That question should not be raised. It's a story. So when Yama returned home, he found a little boy waiting, and then his people, his assistants, approached him and told him, remember, there is a fire. The fire is waiting for you. It may consume you. So be careful. Put out that fire. What is the fire? Aditi. So when a very spiritual person, Brahmanaha means Samodama tapasyaujam kshandirarjavamevacha jnanam vijnanamastikam brahma karma svabhavajam. 9 qualifications are mentioned in the Gita. For an ideal Brahmana, Brahmajnani is Brahmana. For a true spiritual person. Such a person has come to, though a little boy has come to Yama's abode. Vaishwanaraka. the Vaishwanara Agni. Agni has a problem. Agni is something that we use. Agni can be a blessing, and Agni can be a big problem. Agni can burn us, it can also cook our food. So, if a very highly spiritually evolved person comes to you, then it is one way, it is an opportunity for you to get blessings. It is an opportunity for you to learn by respecting him. We are not respecting the person, the physical body, we are respecting the spiritual accomplishments of the person. Now, if you dishonor that person, then what happens, Then it's just like putting a hand on fire. It will burn our fingers. That is why, there is an ancient statement in the Sanskrit literature. Asammana tapo vriddhi sammana hi tapakshayaka. Asammana tapo vriddhi. If you insult a spiritually evolved person, ignore him, discard him, then it's good for him, because all your good punyas will go to him. Because you have discarded him, you are insulting. If you respect a spiritually evolved person, then some of his punyas will come to you, and that punyas will be lost to him. So, sammana hi tapaksheka. So, we here, and there are many statements in our tradition. Adidayescha swadhyaya pravachanecha. These are Madhudevo Bhava, Pidudevo Bhava, Acharya Devo Bhava, Adithi Devo Bhava. So the Atithi Puja, respecting the guest, used to be an integral part of the ancient Vedic culture, of which the Upanishad is the finest fruit. Upanishad resembles the highest reach of the evolution of culture in the Vedic times. So here, Yama's family members approached Yama and told him, Vaishwanarha pravishati adithihi brahmano grihan. So, this Vaishwanarha Agnireva Sakshat Pravishadi Adithihi San Brahmana Grihan Dahanniva. This little boy, who seems to be an extraordinary person, though small, he looks like a very, very extraordinary person, not an ordinary little boy. He seems to be so much focused on some higher spiritual goal in his life, as you are going to find out in the coming sessions in the Katha Upanishad. And he has come to your home, and he remains here with food and water. So you straight away go and console him and propitiate him, because otherwise you will have pratyavaya dosha. You have not properly honored your guest, though you are not directly responsible for it. Still, in your absence, such an exalted spiritual person, though little boy, entered your household and remained outside and without food and water. So that is something very, very inauspicious. So you go and console him. Now at this time, what Yama did, Yama was a very, very cultured, very civilized person. He was a big divine person. He was a devata. He was one of the important members of the heaven. In fact, one of the lieutenants of Indra. But still he was humble, because he knew, because of his sense of propriety, because of his sense of following the principles of dharma, he was elevated to the position of Yama. So Yama immediately realized what he was expected to do. So he approached Nachiketa, and in fact the whole family accompanied Yama, and they approached Nachiketa and told him, Tisro Ratri Yadavasid Grihi Me Anasnan Brahman Adidir Namasya Namaste Astu Brahman Sustimestu Tasma Praditrin Varan Vrinishwa. Tisro Vasi Yadavasi Grihi Me Anasnan Brahman Adidir Namasya. Namasya Adithihi. A guest who deserves honor and respect. That guest remained in my household for 3 days and 3 nights. So please accept my namaskar, my honor, my respect from you, from me. My respect, I give my respects to you. Please accept 3 boons by way of compensation for your unfortunate situation, because you have to wait for 3 days for waiting for my arrival. So in compensation for this, as a prayaschitta, as a penance for this, please ask for 3 boons. These 3 boons constitute 3 levels of human, not only spiritual, human aspirations. The first boon is natural. He's a little boy, and he was apprehensive. Nachiketa was a bit apprehensive that Vajasravasa, his father, would be unhappy and maybe angry. So the first boon was, please make sure, please give me the boon so that my father will be happy, will be well behaved towards me. And not only that, I have left his home to Yama's place, another level of existence. When I go back, he should recognize me, because I have come to the Lord of Death. So somebody who is returning after the experience of death will be considered to be a supernatural being. So my father should recognize me, and he will be happy with me. He should talk to me friendly. He should behave with me properly. And this is the first boon. So you find Shanda Sankalpa Sumana Yadasya Vita Manyu Gutamoma Abhimurtyu the Prasistama Abhivadet Prasida Edatrayanam Prathamam Varam Vrni. Trayanam Prathamam Varam Vrni. This is the first boon that I am going to ask. What's the first boon? First of all, my father should have no concern, no worry, Shanta Sankalpaka, and will be pleased with me. Sumana Yadasya Vidamanyu good, and he should not be angry with me. Mabhimurtyu, and he should talk to me with great affection. Tuprasistama Abhivadet Patida. You have allowed me to go back to earth from the Lord, from the abode of death, and he should not ever imagine that I am a different being. He should be able to recognize me as his father and talk to me and behave with me as he was behaving earlier. This is the first boon. This is the beginning of Nachiketa's evolution. So even to have so much of concern for one's father, and so much of a sense of sanctity and sacredness in human relations, family relations, that itself is a very sound, strong foundation for our spiritual evolution. You find at the next stage, Nachiketa will ask for another boon. We find out, well, a happy life, that's not enough. As individuals, we should look for some higher aspirations. So Nachiketa will ask for a higher boon. He will ask for Agni Vidya, that will help him to go to heaven. And again, third boon, he will ask for Brahma Vidya indirectly. So we will come to that in course of time. Thank you. Namaskar. I hope we will have plenty of time for interactions. Thank you. Namaskar. Now the field is left to you.
So if you have a question, you could type it on the chat window in Zoom or on the YouTube. I will ask or give you the opportunity to speak up here.
They can directly ask me?
Yeah, if I see anybody raising their hand. Just Zoom. Raj, I have one question.
Yeah.
Just some people have joined. So you could probably give us a little bit more guidance on the sadhana chatushtaya you
Yeah.
mentioned in the
Yeah,
beginning part.
that's right. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Can you explain a little bit more on this
Sadhana
sadhana
Chadushtaya. Yeah,
shraddha?
yeah,
You mentioned in the context of
yeah, yeah.
education.
You know, the first sadhana chadushtaya means four important qualifications for spiritual seekers. In a way, indirectly, they constitute an evolution in our perspective to life as a whole. The first one is nitya anitya vastu vivekaha. Even the ability or the spiritual maturity, cultural maturity, intellectual maturity, to think of what is actually real and what is only relative, what is something that is everlasting, in contrast to the ephemeral. That itself is the natural first step in our evolution. And once we start thinking of, well, what is real, what is really what matters, and what is the unreal, something that comes and goes, and then you will have a natural ability to discard what is obviously unreal and stick to what is real, that is ihamutra phalabhoga viraga. You will not have any desire for enjoyment, external enjoyment, either in this life or in a maybe what you call traditionally called heaven or whatever it is. The third qualification is samadhi shatka sampatti. Shama means restraining the mind. Dhamma means restraining the senses. Uh, Uparati means actually the ability to withdraw from things. Tidiksha, the ability to endure. Sakaram sarvabhudanam apradigara purvakam chinta vilaparahidam sa tidiksha nigantiti. The ability to withstand with a stoic mind all obstacles and sticking to our ideal. So, Saddha, Astikya Buddhi. Now, Samadhana means concentration. So, Saddha has got two dimensions. The Saddha that is mentioned in this book, it is much more than Saddha as indicated in the Samadhi Shakra Sampatti. Because Saddha here, in a way, it combines all the four elements of Sadhana Chadushtaya. And even more than that, if a person will have Saddha like Nachiketa had, then that will take you to higher spiritual life. Total identity, integrity, sincerity, and honesty with what we do, that itself will be a natural royal highway to the highest spiritual destination. So Shraddha as mentioned here is much more. So Shankaracharya himself says Astikya Buddhi. It is much more than what is indicated in the Vivekachudamani, where the same teacher Adi Shankaracharya mentions Shraddha as one of the 6 qualifications, the third ingredient of the Sadhana Chatushtaya.
Swamiji, this is Jyoti. Can you hear me?
Oh, I can hear you. Okay.
Yeah. The text that you've been doing, it's something different from because most of the verses that you were sometimes quoting away, it's not in the...
all the verses that I mentioned are from the Katha Upanishad. Now, I have not gone through every verse. Certain verses I have to discard because they are of a descriptive nature of what has already been stated. The Katha Upanishad is a fairly big text, so I cannot go through every single verse. It will take a long time. So there are certain important stages in the Upanishad which if you study carefully, you will get the whole philosophy of Upanishad. So in fact, in many of the traditional schools, they finish the story part maybe in 2-3 hours. But in our case, we will deal with the whole part in a more elaborate way. So, but I did quote a lot of statements from Shankaracharya's Bhashya, because it will be impossible for us to understand anything out of this Upanishad without Bhashya. And the Bhashya statements are so emphatic and so focused. And I read and then I gave very, very elaborate translations. So if you ever feel that when I read this prose, Bhashya is prose, Katha is a metrical word, text, but the Bhashya is prose. So if you feel any difficulty, you can always I can directly answer your question, address your questions, even before the end of the lecture proper.
Get the Pasha also then, because the book
If
that I
you,
have
well, if you get a copy of Bhasha, it'd be wonderful. But I'm not sure all our audience will be familiar with that. At the same time, since this is a very serious audience, I felt it will be injustice if I completely skip the Bhashya proper. Because without the Bhashya, you cannot really get the true sense of the Upanishad mantras. Anybody who teaches Katha Upanishad, they get everything from Shankara. Without Shankara, no one can read and understand anything of the Upanishads. So, there are certain emphatic statements in the Bhashya, which is so graphic in detail and description, which I quoted that. So, you need not worry. When I quote something which is not in the text, the Katha Upanishad text, you don't worry, you just listen to the translation. And those who are enough knowledge of Sanskrit can have a copy of the Shankara's commentary. If you know Hindi very well, you can get a copy of Gita Press Gorakhpur Hindi translation of the Katha Upanishad, Bhashya with Bhashya.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
There's a question from the online. I will say it for you on his behalf. PG asks, Nachiketa got 2 wishes for the price of 1 by asking that his father treat him as before. He has implicitly guaranteed that he would go back to the mortal world. So you have a comment.
One can say because he had the blessings to see Yama himself, everything will be okay with him. But he was concerned about his own father, as every dutiful son should be. So that's why his first boon was not for anything profoundly spiritual. It was the natural aspiration of an ideal son in the family setting. The sanctity and sacredness of human relations in the family setting, you can see that. So he says, Shanda Sangalpa, see, my father should not have any worry, he should be peaceful, tranquil, and he should be he'll be very pleasant, and he should talk to me, and then he should recognize me, because going to the abode of death will mean you are no more this physical body, and you return, you may think this is a ghost, maybe some supernatural being. I mean, some other commentators make that statement, how can it be? So he was concerned that his father may not recognize him. So you can find the concern of a child. Whether it would have guaranteed some higher benefit for him in worldly terms, we do not know. But the thrust of the Upanishad is that the first natural human aspiration will be for a happy, healthy, pleasant family life in this world. Human relationship with the family, and all the other necessary elements necessary for happy family life. That's the first natural human aspiration. And then comes the next aspiration. So you find sometimes people who are enormously rich and very happy in the worldly life, suddenly they take to some philanthropical activities, because it's not because of this maybe, but depending upon the culture, they were trying to think of, well, what happens to me after some time when this money is not, I cannot take my checkbook with me when I leave this world. When you die, you don't take your checkbook and fountain pen with you. So what happens? So I should still have something in store. So you find in India, also in Buddhist countries, people spend enormous wealth in certain activities that ensure some spiritual benefit, punya, meritorious deeds they do. That's the next evolution. Then, at a much higher level, the highest Brahma Vidya, spiritual aspiration.
Sriram, you can unmute and ask your question.
Namaste Swamiji, this is Sriram Swamiji. So the
Sriram,
Shraddha in Sadhana Chatushtayam is just Guru Vedanta Vakyadishu Vishwasana Shraddha, that's the definition. But you said that Shraddha that you described
that is the definition of Shraddha as mentioned in the Sadhana Chatushtaya, in Viveka Chudamani, in other Vedantic introductory texts. But in the Katha Upanishad, Tam Kumaram, Santam Dakshina Su Niyamana Su Shraddha Avivesha. So, Shraddha came and possessed him. That Shraddha is defined by Shankaracharya as Astike Buddhi, as something, well, it is much more than Shastrasya Guruvakyasya, Satya Buddhya Avadharana, as mentioned. It is much more than that. It is a total faith, and conviction of a higher spiritual reality, and one's dedication to follow the path for realizing that reality.
You're saying it encompasses the Sadhana Chatushtayam completely.
Yeah. In fact, the whole Sadhana Chatushtaya can be said to be included in this, actually. Because Mumukshutvam is stated as something different, as the fourth factor in the Sadhana Chatushtaya proper. But on the other hand, Shraddha is just one of the 6 principal disciplines. But here, as you mentioned, Shraddha includes Mumukshutvam also.
Can you contrast the Yama Niyama of Patanjali with Sadhana Chatushtayam? Yama Niyama is for Antakarna.
Yama Niyamas are fundamental disciplines not only for spiritual life. In fact, in the basic arena of human life, Yamas and Niyamas are important. That's why Patanjali himself says, Sarvabhaumaha. So he calls Yamas as Sarvabhauma, Himsa, Satya, Asteya, Brahmacharya, Avarigraha. Non-violence, truthfulness, and non-stealing, and non-receiving of gifts, all contentment, all these qualities, they are so universal in application. They are not limited to spiritual field. Yamas and Niyamas are essential for an ordered, disciplined life in this world, for a cultured, civilized order of social life. Yamas and Niyamas are important. The only point is, in modern times, you need a law enforcement system to enforce Yamas and Niyamas. But here they are elevated to a high level of natural discipline by Patanjali. So Patanjali's Bhashyagaras, for example, Vyasa and others, and Shankara written the Bhashya Vivarana. He says, the Yamas and Niyamas are a natural characteristics of any spiritual seeker. They need not be separately sought after and practiced. When you develop a higher aspiration in life, Yamas and Niyamas are automatically added to that.
They are included in Shama, Dhamma, Paramas, Diksha.
Yeah, Shama is restraining the mind, let us say. See, actually, when you go for a higher goal in life, you have to discipline your mind, otherwise mind will be scattered, it will go in all directions. And then you have to practice Dhamma, you have to control the senses. Senses also will create a totally chaotic condition. And then Uparati, withdrawing our mind away from disturbances, distracting objects, and then total dedication. So all these qualities are necessary even if you want to accomplish something high in material life. That's why Yamas and Niyamas are not necessarily limited to spiritual life. In spiritual life, it automatically comes. If you are a devotee of God, if you are a karma yogi, you find Yamas and Niyamas automatically become part of your mental structure.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
see any other questions,
Yeah.
Maharaj. Give another 30 seconds. Not, we can close it.
Yeah, it's okay. So thank you. So we'll have the next session. We'll continue from where we stopped today. Thank you.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you,
Namaste.
thank you. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.